You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 565.
Hello folks, and welcome back to The Outdoors Station, the longest running outdoors podcast in the world. I did say I was getting back into the saddle, and here I am. It's been a while to get the production wheels rolling again, and this is mainly due to the time it takes to track down and contact potential interviewees and set dates and do research on their story. And this two-parter story is a cracker. So may I suggest you start your walk or run now, or maybe if you're sitting in a tent, just open the door and relax. Or if you're driving, find a convenient traffic jam to sit back and listen to this. At sunrise on Monday the 1st of May 2023, 56-year-old Nikki Love stood on the beautiful, quiet Coto Beach, staring out west and admiring the deep, restful blue of the Indian Ocean. The Coto beachfront is a chilled-out cosmopolitan area to the west of the city of Perth, home to countless boutiques and coffee shops which lie beneath apartments and condos, which are the envy of many. A few residents were emerging, blinking in the sunshine, breathing in the fresh sea air before turning towards their chosen coffee shop to get a patisserie treat for their bank holiday day off. Nikki, however, had other plans. She calmly dipped her toes in the sea and turned east to face the rising sun. Then she started to run. Her goal was another beach, a bit further away, Bondi Beach, in fact, a mere 4,044 kilometres or 2,527.5 miles to the east. Yes, this is the story of Nikki Love, the Sheila that spent 76 days, 3 hours and 43 minutes running across Australia, supported by her ever-patient partner, Sharif. Now, Nikki wasn't doing this for likes and clicks. She wasn't doing it for influencer status. She was doing it just to see if she could, which makes her the perfect interviewee for the Outdoor Station. Now, I'm going to let the conversation unfold naturally, and during this part, Nikki mentions several training runs which got her ready for the start line, all of which can be found in the show notes. But as you'll hear, not everything went to plan. And this is where character, determination, stubbornness, and a little bit of madness always helps. So if you've had a bad day, or are feeling a bit low and need a pick-me-up, please check out both these podcasts. Then tell me you are too old for whatever it is you want to do. And for those who want the pictures to go with this, then please check out our YouTube channel. The full interview will be there. So even though Nikki finished in July of that year, she hasn't rested on her laurels. Always one for a new challenge, she's now enrolled on a degree course at Loughborough University. So naturally, my first question was to find out which she preferred, the academic challenge or the challenge of running over 2,500 miles.
I know which one I like better. Definitely. This sitting and thinking, it mucks up two things. Is A, this sitting forever is just, it's hard work. And the thinking that added to it is just, oh, my brain, my poor brain. That doesn't mean that I don't think when I'm running. I do think when I'm running, but it's just so much simpler. Life is so much simpler when all I have to think about is what hurts, why does it hurt, how do I fix it stop it from hurting. This whole going to university where I have to analyse and synthesise and then project a thought process with research is like, no, not just what I think, it has to be something that I've found out.
Yes,
and a little bit harder.
And you've got to justify everything you write, haven't you? It's all got to be cross-referenced and legit and not produced by AI, which is probably the big thing that people are talking about.
Yeah, so I'm going to put my little hand up here and say that I read so many research papers, and half the time I don't understand it. So I do actually copy some of it into AI and say, "Can you please dumb this down for me?" and therefore I get a body of text that I can read and then go, "Yes, I've understood that. Yes, that means that." Because this whole writing technically, academically, oh my gosh, do they put in words that are that long when they could have a word that long? So I am using it. I think it's coming in really rather handy. So I think there is definitely a time and a place for it.
That's a brilliant way of using it, actually. I never thought about it, using it to make things more backwardly understandable. It makes much more sense. It's a good one. Good one. And how are you getting on with your educational colleagues? I presume you're 1 or 2 years older than a few of them.
Oh yes, I've talked to a couple of other mature students who I'm the only one in my year, but there's a couple in the second year, and they have a similar thing to me, is that nobody really sits next to me. So I think it's like, oh, don't want to sit next to her. You'll catch old or something. Having said that, the people that I do sit with, and pretty much everybody is lovely. They'll smile. Good thing is they open up the door and hold it open, because I'm too feeble and old to hold it myself. So there's always benefits. You can always see a positive side to this. But actually, the people that I do chat with, and I have made friends, so I'm really happy about that. That they're fine.
So you're in the line of mature students in the back row, or tittering amongst yourselves, are you?
Yeah, definitely not. I'm the very front row. I have taken it up the front, and I have to be close enough so I can see, close enough so I can hear.
No, it's. I think it's sports psychology, isn't it? You're studying there. So
yeah.
Has the news been released yet amongst your peers, as it were, in the lecture halls, of your achievements and what you've done recently?
Yeah. There's been a few things that have come out, and yeah, it is it's a nice thing to go in with a bit of years experience, rather than sort of like them coming in from uni with the whole world the life to experience it. I've come in with the experience and going backwards, so kind of reverse engineering everything, really. But yes, I've had that. A few comments is like, amazing, crazy is a term that gets thrown around quite a lot, even with the young folk.
Well, I think you did a talk recently. Is that right? Did many of them turn up for the talk?
Yes, I did a talk, and it was nice. It wasn't a big group, but it was just a nice small little gathering where I got to tell a little story. So.
Wow, let's get into that little story then. So let's just have a little bit of a synopsis about sort of the previous history to getting to Coto Beach. There's obviously 10 or 15 years worth of prior experience, and I think you refer to them as training runs. So would you just like to list them off with the timescale? I think you did your first marathon. The notes I've got here, it's 2001, 2002, and then from there onwards the story unfolds. So just give the listeners and the viewers a bit of an idea.
Okay, so 2001, I attempted my first marathon and failed. Got to the 19-mile mark and stopped and had no understanding, no concept of how I could keep going. So I stopped and went home and got upset about the fact that I'd given up. I justified it. I'd only just recently had given birth. I had probably mama brain going on, thinking, yeah, I'm just going to go and run a marathon without training. It doesn't work very well. Got to the 19-mile mark and went, yeah, I wasn't ready for this. I'll go home. But most importantly was that I got home and I said to myself that, no, that wasn't the story I want to finish, how I want this to finish. I want to be a marathon runner. I am going to work on it. I want to tell this story of how you can, not get it right the first time, go again. I'd done it many times, and just on that, the doing that many times, I failed my high school, my final year at high school. I then went to night school, and 40 years later, I'm now at university. So if you want to do something, you don't give up the first time it doesn't go to plan. You try and find an alternative version. So anyway, the next year, 6 months later, I did the training and I finished my first marathon, second attempt. I then did another marathon a couple of years later, and these were the London marathons, because I only had this concept of London marathons, so you only do London marathons. So 2 years later, I got a place, did the London marathon. So that was 2004. 2010, I got another place for London Marathon. And by this stage, I thought, okay, what do I want to do? I don't particularly want to go faster. I want to see what I'm capable of. Can I go further? And the idea of running multiple days, I'd read a couple of books and it had sort of sunk in there that maybe I could do this thing. I want to see if I can. And so I came up with the idea that I'd run 30 marathons in 30 days. And the consensus of the people that were around me was like, no, you can't do that. How about making it a little bit smaller? How about 7 marathons in 7 days? I went, okay, all right, I can do 7 marathons in 7 days. I'm going to give that a go. Did the 7 marathons in 7 days, the 7th one being the London Marathon in 2010. Day 8. Couldn't move. I was just like, I was totally flat. Crawled out of the bed, crawled to the kitchen, crawled back to bed. That was it. That was me. Sort of had a couple of thoughts in there. Is that, wow, I did it, but oh my gosh, look at the state of me. And it did take me months to overcome that, to get back to sort of a level of fitness for little injuries to settle down. And again, the consensus around me was, oh, you're not very good at this stuff, are you? Well, no, I'm not. But I can get better. But it sort of sat there for a long time, many years, actually. But slowly and surely, this idea that I wanted to do these big things, I wanted to see what I was capable of achieving. Fast forward to 2016, it was the year before my 50th birthday, and I wanted to do something crazy, something wild, something back like that again. And so I booked myself to go to the jungle, and I did the Jungle Ultra. The following year, I ran 63 marathons in 63 days, and I'm going to go really fast now. I ran 63 marathons in 63 days. I wanted to run across Australia. I knew I couldn't run across Australia just yet for many reasons. So I booked in these other little sort of training runs. So I ran around Ireland. I ran across the Netherlands. I ran the length of Wales. And I thought, okay, I'm ready to go to Australia. COVID happened. Couldn't go to Australia, so I tried to run Australia on a treadmill. Not my smartest idea, but it was yet another training run for the emptiness and the monotony of what I knew was going to come in Australia, the Nullarbor, and did that. Finally got to Australia, May the 1st, and started this crazy run. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, that's an epic thing, and I'm sure people listening to this will go, "What?" And every new edition you do, "What?" So let's just expand on a few of those things, because I know that during that period of time, say prior to May the 1st, let's just go backwards a bit. You didn't have the best times medically. You had a few injuries. You had perimenopausal issues as well, and there were other things that you're sort of trying to cope with and get into balance. But on top of that, even with the time it takes to train, plus the time it takes to do the activities, how did you manage to juggle a family life and work and all that sort of thing? I mean, the things that sort of stop the rest of us doing such crazy things, you know?
Yeah. So it's a simple answer, and it's a simple answer. I wanted to do all of these things, so I made time to do them. I set my life up to be able to do this stuff. So when I had a baby back in 2001, I had already planned out that I wanted to be the mum who took her kid to school, picked him up, had school holidays. What could I do? I started a business that allowed me to do these things. So I already built this sort of life of there's things that I want to do, so I have to work to make these things happen. So I have had my own business, and that has been up and down. And some of the downs were that, I have ups and made a lot of money, downs, lost a lot of money. And some of those downs impacted my ability to go to Australia. So there is this background of I had chosen to have this lifestyle, and then when I wanted to do these adventures, I had to again try and work out, how do I make these things happen? So that's it's a very long story, but it can be very complicated, or it can be very simple in that I had to make it happen, so I did. And they were the choices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm self-employed as well, and have been for many years, and I understand the fine balance you do. I think a lot of people think because you're self-employed, that you're having a fantastic time all the time, but of course you don't get paid holidays, and you don't get all the other benefits that employees get. And sometimes people don't quite grasp the sacrifices that you have to make if you become well known, shall we say, for doing one particular thing or whatever. A lot of people don't look behind that and understand actually the sort of changes in your life and sacrifices you've had to make to achieve that. As much as it's all been your choice, it's still something you consciously have to go through, and it can be if you achieve the goals and you enjoy what you're doing, obviously that's the reward in itself. But at the same time, it can also be quite punishing that you can't afford, I don't know, a new suit or a new car or a new whatever, because you're putting your money where your interests lie.
Yeah, definitely. It's easy to explain to somebody who knows the experience. A little harder to explain when somebody does a 9-to-5 job, but then they have to have this alternative issues. Is how do you get time off to do this? You've got to make a choice.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so I think people can obviously go to your website, which will be on the screen, and we'll put in the show notes anyway, to look at some of the backstories and particularly some of the interesting ones you've done. In fact, before we come to Australia again, that one you did in the jungle, that sounded really interesting. I've only seen one picture of you. I think it was on your website somewhere, where you were obviously climbing a bank or whatever, and you've got to carry. It was very much like an adventure race. You have to carry all your own equipment for the period of time. But what was that actually like to race in the jungle? Because that's a completely different environment from normal Australia and the normal UK, really.
It was probably one of the scariest things I've done, and I've done a lot of scary things, but the so I do when I put these adventures or these thoughts together, is just sort of start at the very top and go, all right, what can kill me? List all those things, and there was a whole lot of things that could kill me in the jungle. There's a whole lot of things that could kill me in Australia as well, but you start there and you work your way down and go, okay, how do I mitigate against this? And it really was scary. The animals that can kill, I don't know, they're on a par with Australia, but possibly more likely because I was in the jungle, whereas in Australia I was on the road. The terrain was just incredible, but really dangerous yet again. And the experience was, it was 250 kilometres over 5 days. Yes, carrying everything that you need to survive for those 5 days on your back, including tent. It was a hammock tent, food, but they gave you water at checkpoints. But the scenario is that the checkpoints are very far apart, and in between the checkpoints is just jungle. And so once you actually get in there and you start moving around, you realise that actually, I think the amount of people that I did it with, I think there was only 20. So 20 people spread out pretty quickly over a day. And so I spent pretty much the whole 5 days by myself, knowing that it was a course, but you are just in the middle of nowhere, and for them to rescue you, they would have to hike in to be able to carry you out. So it was, and some of the drops were sheer. It was just a crazy experience. Like I said, probably the most scariest I think I've done, but also most affirming in that it being put in a position where you've got to rely on yourself. Okay, it was a little bit of a safety net there, but you have to rely on yourself. Then you're going to have to sort of keep trudging and keep going and deal with things that might scare you, and do it scared anyway. And that became quite a lesson for Australia. And I talk about lessons with running, but it crosses over into life as well. I'm scared when I do a lot of things, but I'm okay with being scared because I know that I can function still scared, and I just have to keep going and keep going and keep going, because part of it is having a wild imagination, but the wild imagination gets me to these places anyway. But the imagination enough to go, okay, I can deal with this, I can handle this, I'll keep going, I'm all right.
Right.
Even when there's potentially danger.
Yeah. I mean, having been to the jungle myself, I've just a few days whilst doing some travelling and stepping off the path just a few yards. It's incredible how quickly you get disorientated. You've got no idea which way's north, let alone which way's up. What did you do for navigation? Just very briefly, did you have a GPS or a compass and you had to get from A to B, or was it literally you just had to beat your way through the undergrowth?
So it was marked out, but if you didn't pay attention, then it was very easy to get lost. And I did get lost. You had a tracker on you, so hopefully they noticed. And if you'd gone too far off the path, then either you realised because you didn't see a marker for a very long time, you'd have to backtrack and try and hopefully get back onto the right track. I did it once majorly. The rest of the time it was pretty well marked out, that there was only sort of like one way to go. So it was either via a river, or then the jungle bit was kind of paved out. I'd say they'd gone through and cut bushes down and put markers along. So like I said, there was a safety net there, but you had to be very vigilant. And I did a same race organisers in the desert in Namibia, and took a wrong turn there and went quite a few kilometres, and they realised, and they were out searching for me because of the GPS that I had on me, to try and bring me back. I had realised that I'd gone the wrong way. Thankfully, it was an easy turnaround to come back, but I'd gone quite a few kilometres before I realised that I was in the middle of nowhere in the desert by myself. Yeah, that was, again, another scary thing.
Yeah. I mean, how does it make you feel when you realise you've made a mistake of that sort of magnitude?
It is scary, and it's very easy for the mind to go, oh, you dumb bum. and berate yourself. And this is part of the self-talk that comes into play, that actually telling yourself off. Okay, you tell yourself off for a little bit, and then you have to gather your thoughts and go, all right, I need to be smart enough to think this through and get myself out of this. And so self-talk becomes such a part of the experience, because even, just running the 63 marathons here in the UK, if I made a mistake, and sometimes the mistakes were not carrying my water or leaving the house without my water. I mean, that's such a rookie mistake, but I was tired and went off to start my run, and then sort of realised I didn't put my water bottles in my backpack. Okay, turn around, go back, fix the situation. Don't talk yourself down, don't talk yourself out, talk yourself up. And these are the things that actually, this experience and practice and training runs all the time, is that you learn to be able to turn this self-talk around, right, so that you're actually going in the right direction, not talking yourself out of situations.
Right. Okay. And looking at the other one, the 63 marathon, 63 days, 7-day ones, Ireland, Wales, and the Netherlands, were you completely on your own and providing your own support, or did you have a partner or somebody that just sort of kept your eye on you and topped you up with food every now and again, or were you completely solo, as it were?
So that they have varied. So the 63 marathons, my partner Sharif, he did come along to get me going. The intention was that he'd only stay for the first week, and then I would be off on my own, driving the van by myself, just parking up at the next place. That didn't work. After the first week, he was like, "You're not going to do this. You can't drive." It took a couple of weeks before I was able to look after myself. So he did hang around, but obviously things, you have these beautiful plans and things don't go to plan, and so you've got to make adjustments, you've got to pivot, you've got to turn, and part of that was the van actually broke down, so we had to come back from Scotland back to Nottingham overnight, run the next day, and then run around Nottingham instead of these 63 locations that I had chosen all around the UK. But I kept the main goal there, had to pivot and turn to adjust to issues and problems and obstacles that came up, kept going. And when I was back here, slowly but surely, I got used to doing those long runs and was able to actually go out and run by myself. So there were days when I either had somebody come run with me, or I would run by myself with everything I needed in my backpack. So that then varied. But then when we went on the trip again to go to the different places around the UK, then he was in the car, he was in the van, and sort of up ahead. Ireland was the same. We had a car. He was 10 k's ahead, and I just leapfrogged me. Right. Netherlands, I was on my own with a backpack. Wales, I was with another runner backpack. So it has varied. Australia was very much, again, my partner Sharif as my crew, and just a little on that. That was he had to take a 3-month hiatus, and he wasn't given time off from work, so he actually had to quit his job. And again, these are things that we discussed. What are the risks we're taking? What is the implications? What is the sort of long-term thing? And the long-term thing is actually, it's taken him a while to get back to work, and this has had a knock-on effect. But we had chosen this path. So he's now at work again, and we're trying to sort of get our lives back on track again, because it cost a lot of money, and that's the thing that you have to toss up.
I hope you're enjoying this show, and thanks once again for subscribing to the series of over 560 podcasts. As you probably know, it takes many hours to prepare, produce and promote every show, and as a way to help with our ongoing costs, the fabulous online store valleyandpeak.co.uk are supporting us with a small donation from every purchase made from one of our links, which can be found on the Outdoor Station website or social media posts. And that's it. If you're looking for new outdoor gear of any kind, visit Valley and Peak via one of our links, and it could support the longest running outdoors-based podcast in the world. Yeah. It's got to come from somewhere, certainly. And like we were discussing earlier on, I mean, I think people don't realise sometimes the amount of sacrifice it takes to just get to the start line in many people's lives. So, talking of which, getting to a start line of a country where everything is trying to kill you, the weather's trying to kill you, the insects are trying to kill you, the snakes, the dogs, everything's trying to kill you. Welcome to Australia. and
there are signs everywhere.
Yes, yeah.
Come to the beach. All right, here's the places where you can't go in the water because you'll die.
yeah, absolutely. What were the jellyfish out there that was all caused the problems? It's not the Portuguese man of war, is it? Or is it something else? There was particular stingers. Oh God, it was. I mean, it's a beautiful place and fantastic, but you really have to do things carefully. Talking of which, here we are on Cottesloe Beach. I've been to Cottesloe Beach. I've swam there. I've surfed. I've posed. I've done various things in my younger, fitter days. And it's a beautiful place to be. And I just looked recently on the Google Earth before we had this conversation, just to remind me what it looked like. It looks completely different now. It's really built up and well, a magnificent surfer's paradise by the looks of it. But what a place to start your adventure.
Oh, it really is, but it's more low key than Surfers Paradise. So, but yeah, I'd never been to Cottesloe Beach. I'd been to Perth when I was a baby. So my parents were 10-pound poms, so they caught a boat to Australia to emigrate with me as a baby, and they arrived in Fremantle, and then took the boat, continued over to Melbourne. So I grew up on the east coast in Melbourne. Right. So getting to Cottesloe Beach, Perth, was just an incredible experience because I had looked at this for 10 years. I'd pinpointed where I was going to start if I ever started. That was such an experience of finally making it to this place that had been in my head for such a long time. And it was just stunning. But to get to that start line, like I said, it was a 10-year process. But even from my hometown, place called Geelong, that was a 4,000-kilometre 5-day trip to get there before I even started.
If there's one thing I want to get across to people while we have this conversation, is you just don't realise just how big Australia is, and the route that you took, as coincident would have it, I've driven that route many years ago, but again, looking at the notes and reading some of your blog posts and whatever else, it brought it all back. But we'll come to various stages as we talk. So going back to that first day, there's the two of you. Is there anybody else there? Is there like the press or Guinness Book of Records or anybody, or are you just standing there with a flag going, right, I'm off?
So we got there arrived on the Friday, and I was going to start on the Sunday. I think it was Sunday. I'm not sure the date now. Anyway, I told as many people as I could. I'd put it out into the press, even my hometown press, and nobody really was interested before I did it. So I got completely blanked, like, oh yeah, anybody can say they're going to do it. But I went to the park run, Cottesloe Park Run on the Saturday. I met a couple of people who said that they would come along to the start, and they turned up somebody actually put us up for the night, which was lovely. We got to the start line just before 7 o'clock in the morning, and actually this is somebody that I think you should also talk to. Tom Fremantle, he's walked around the world, and he was doing the Australia leg of his walk, and he'd flown in from Asia the night before, and he turned up at my start. Now, I'd been following Tom for years, and I was having a fangirl moment. I was just like, oh my gosh, oh it's Tom, he's here. A couple of people waved me off, and we filmed everything to make sure that I could tell the story and that it was real and it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. And then took off from there.
Right, okay. And so the first day's run then, I think, when I worked out the mileage, which I'll put up on the screen at some stage and we'll talk about perhaps towards the end there, but I worked it out that you had to average across the period of time you took, which was 76 days, folks, almost 8 weeks. I was going to tell you 8 weeks, 10, 11 weeks, 53 kilometres a day. So 53 kilometres. Now, last time I went to Perth, which was, 10 or 15 years ago now, it had expanded so much. Did you actually get out of town on the first day? You actually made it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. Whilst Perth has grown, it's still quite a small major city. 55 kilometres took me to pretty much the outskirts. It was beyond the suburbs. It was starting to get into the little what you call them. They're not suburbs of Perth, but just country towns. So I got to the first country town. We had no idea where we were going to park up. I ran 55 kilometres that first day. We were driving around in this country town and looked at the football club and thought, well, we'll park here. But then we weren't sure, and so there was a pub open. So Sharif went into the pub and said, and the guy said, yeah, you can just park here, that's fine. And Sharif was like, great, I'm set for the night. What about you? And I'm like lying in the van going, no, all right. So I walked into the pub. And the guy said, oh, you've got a long way to go. Yeah, I know. Thanks. He goes, you're looking a bit rough. I went, oh, thanks. Are you going to make it? Yeah, I'm going to give it my best go. And that was pretty much how it continued on. The first
Australian.
3 weeks.
Very, very understated.
Yeah. Very understated. The first week it was rough. Second week got rougher. Third week things were starting to fall into place, and it wasn't until probably the fourth week that really I became a functioning human again, where I was able to actually hold a conversation, stay awake, and by that stage we were in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't have anyone to talk to anyway other than the Sharif.
Fair enough. So just that first period then, getting, we'll say, warmed up into it, let's just give people an idea. Now, you had was it a hip injury or something which was affecting you before you started?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, I had a pelvis fracture, a stress fracture in my pelvis, and that was perimenopausal related. It took me 2 years to sort of rebuild, try and work out what I could do to. I can't fix being perimenopausal, but could I do things that were better for me that would sort of help me? And I was looking at it in that direction. The GP advice was like, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Well, I disagree. and I had to do a lot of work to try and fix what I could fix. And also then understand that again, I'm going to take a risk here, but I'm going to do it with training, with knowledge, with lots of fingers crossed, that I put myself in a position, my body in a position where I hopefully should be able to cope with this. Just before I flew out to Australia, I did slip over on some black ice and hurt my bum again. But I got to Australia, got to physio, and we'd sort of like tossed this up as like, I don't think it's anything serious. It certainly doesn't feel the same as when there was a bone problem. Let's just keep working towards sort of like building up, and so the pre-training for Australia didn't go to plan, but then again, nothing does. I haven't sort of experienced things going perfectly to plan. And again, this is this experience, this is this training of like, okay, deal with the issues, overcome the obstacles, work out a way to keep the goal in mind, but work your way towards it and take the little detours that you might need to take. So the first 3 weeks were really part of my training to get me ready to do the second 8 weeks, second half of this run across Australia. So, it was hard and it was tough, and there is an adaptation phase, and I would have preferred to have done a little bit more adaptation before I started, but it just rolled into it, and I just had to deal with the punches of, this is hard.
Okay. So were you then, just going back to those first 3 weeks? I visualise it in over the period of the whole thing. This is your acclimatising yourself really to what you were doing. Just talk us through what your daily routine was, and I mean, were you in pain or was it discomfort? Would you described it? You're pushing yourself through.
It's discomfort, and there is a difference between discomfort and pain, and there was some pain as well. So the pain was that I was running on a camber and I was running into the traffic on the right-hand side of the road, so running into the traffic so I could watch the traffic. I didn't want to run on the left-hand side. I'd tried it, and the traffic coming up and whizzing by me was more scary than me watching the traffic coming towards me. So I had to deal with the fact that I was on a camber and my right side was struggling because of this unevenness of the road. That was muscle, that was tendon, that was pain, but it was stuff that I could deal with, and I understood. At no point did it feel like it was deeper, that I couldn't quite find the pain point, which is what had happened with the pelvis. I was running that day, and I just could not pinpoint where this pain was coming from. So my background is sports therapist, and so I did have a very good understanding of body and muscles and all that sort of stuff. So that has helped me sort of deal with what goes on with my body when I'm running. So there was pain. There was just tiredness. There was an unexpected spike in temperature. I'd done all my research, and the temperature does, Mother Nature does what Mother Nature does, and so it was hotter than average. And hotter than average meant that there was lots of flies and all these things. They just make running uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, it's as I say, it's a lovely country when you hit the right spot, but on a bad day, like any country, it can really go for it, can't it? So your actual daily routine then, because I think you describe yourself, you're not a fast runner, you're sort of a plodder, if that's not being offensive, but a steady pace. So what sort of time of day did you start? Did you stop for sort of have some sort of break or a bite, and normally what times would you finish? And obviously, just to remind people as well, when as they'll see from the pictures, that the road, although it's wide, does have this camber on the side, and it's actually nothing but it's just a thick shale, isn't it? It's just hardcore I say pretty well all the way, really.
Yeah. I'm a fair weather runner. I like to run during daylight, and I like to see where I'm going. But that's obviously you have to do a little bit more with this, because I'm also a slow runner. slow runner. So Australia that time of year is winter, although they didn't tell Mother Nature that. So the sunlight hours, daylight hours, are 7 till 6. And they shortened the further in I got. So at one point before the time changed, it was sort of closer to 5 that it was getting dark. And I take a long time to run. So the goal had been that I would start just before, in the dark, just going into a sunrise. So 6 o'clock didn't always happen. Sometimes it was 7 o'clock. Certainly in the early weeks it was, as I, because I was so tired. So 7 o'clock sort of start, run. And in those first few weeks, it was really hot. It was over 30 degrees. And even though I had gone to Australia to acclimatise, it was still very hot. So certainly in the first 2 weeks, I had an afternoon little siesta or break, got in the van just to sort of get out of that sort of 1 till 2 p.m. sunshine, and got back out onto the road. I stopped to eat, drink, and finished as the sun was setting. As I got stronger, as I got more confident, as I became more human, which is the adaptation phase, the getting up at 6 o'clock became easier. And so running into a sunrise and then running slightly into when it got dark, I did that quite a few times, especially over the second half of the Nullarbor, and heading into South Australia. But once we got back into population and the roads were busier, running at night, I thought it was dangerous for me. I thought it was dangerous for traffic, seeing this head torch sort of coming towards them. So I very rarely ran into the evenings, but I would start earlier in the morning.
Sure.
And yeah, basically it was just get up, run, get up, run.
It's that simple. Just get up and run every morning without fail for weeks on end in 30 degrees heat, dodging traffic, always keeping the goal in mind. Hopefully this introduction to Nikki gives you an idea of the kind of sacrifice, commitment and determination it takes to reach for a personal goal, especially when you're not doing it for clicks. If you think this was impressive, wait till you hear part 2, as Nikki and Sharif continue through drought areas, no water for over 100 miles, facing road trains up to 56 metres long, who don't stop for anything coming the opposite way, being hunted by wild dogs, the endless kindness and concern of motorists, and not having a shower for over 44 days. Then finally getting to the finish line, completely unprepared for it. So please come back and join me for part 2 of my conversation with the fabulous Sheila on the road, Nikki Love.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear or see more from our extensive free library, please visit theoutdoorstation.co.uk.